Action.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Grudge Report featuring the Apple TV show, The Foundation. I'm Margaret Reeb and I work at the SETI Institute, and I am joined as always by Franck Marchis, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and chief science officer at Unistellar. And in this episode, we're going to talk about episode 5 of season 1 of The Foundation called Upon Awakening. So if you haven't seen this episode or you don't want to be spoiled, turn around, go watch the episode and come back, because we are going to spoil everything about it and overanalyze the science of this episode. So thank you for joining as always and tuning in. Franck, where should we start?
Well, I think we should start on Synax. The story of Synax is very compelling for scientific conversation, I guess.
Yes, and Synax is the home world of Gael, who we meet in the first episode. She won the science competition, Harry's science competition, and then she becomes entangled with the Foundation. So I think the first 20 minutes of this episode is a flashback to explain her character on her home world. And it seems like her home world has fallen victim to climate change, where ice caps have melted, the sea has risen, and most of the society believes that they should worship the sleeping god and that they don't need interference or knowledge from the outside world, and knowledge is punishable by death. So what did you make of this plot line and this backstory for Gael?
Yeah, this is a description of a world that basically was facing a problem, climate change in this case, the raising of the water, as you mentioned, and also the problem of food productions, because that's what they eat. Gael have a conversation with the father, and the father say there is not enough food for us, so we need to use some of the money you're making by becoming an acolyte of the religion to feed ourselves. So what I understand from the show is that the crisis happened not that long time ago, because they still have universities, but those universities are now condemned and forbidden. So it probably happened like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, based on the fact that the university is still there, and the water may have started rising, and they have to kind of change their way of life. And during this unstable moment in the civilization, they have to take two paths. Either try to solve the problem by studying it and trying to understand what's going on, or they went into the spiritual path, which is in this case a religion that took over and become kind of an explanation for everything they're seeing, and as well a solution. So they claim this religious group claims that they need to worship the sleepers, so they will ascend in the future and get a better life, and this plan, and they should basically face the issue now. So we have these new characters coming in the story. The instructor, Han, I think is the name.
Dr. Sorn.
Yeah, he was a friend of the parents of Gael, so they have conversation in the past, and he's a scientist, and Gael found him in the library. He's taking books probably, and he's probably want to save them, and he told her about those books, and he told her about the fact that knowledge is important, and that she needs to also study more than spending time in the church. And then they capture him and they kill him. And the way they kill him is absolutely...
it's terrifying.
Yeah. They basically drown it with his books, with his knowledge.
Right. With his
a good symbolism, of course. So he dies, and Gael got curious. She's not really an acolyte. She obviously has more than that. And she goes into the ocean and pick up the books. And that's the way she started learning by herself, and learning mathematical equation, or learning about reading about the phenomena, what's going on in the planet. And she's getting convinced by reading and by learning and studying that the religion path is not the right one, and they need to find a solution. So she's become a scientist somehow.
Yes. And I really like the point in the episode where she's won the math competition. She understands scientifically what's going on her planet. And she has this point where she has to decide if she is going to forget all of that and return to being an acolyte and live with her family, or if she has to forge another path. And she essentially says, I can't go back. I know this now and I can't forget it, which is interesting. And there is a lot of truth in there. There's a lot of adages, ignorance is bliss, or knowledge as a burden of, something and you can't go back to how you were acting, and even the maybe the happiness and the bliss that you felt before you knew the truth of what was going on. So I really liked that, her voiceover too. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I like that. This a character make me think a lot about Malala. You remember this girl in Pakistan, I think it was,
yes.
who basically got shot by terrorists because she was a girl going to school. And and she became kind of the face of giving the right to women in some countries to access to an education. The world Malala lives is a bit similar to the world that we see on this planet, where you probably had a very rich culture in the past. They had universities, books, and so on. And then some extremist comes and basically decide to wipe out the entire past and drive people to an extremist religion. And in this extremist vision of this religion, they basically claim that knowledge is dangerous. So they destroy, in this case, universities and schools. So I don't know if the parallel can be made, but it's something that can happen. It's something that a civilization can basically be driven out of knowledge. We have seen that in our own history. The Middle Age was that. Mm-hmm. There was suddenly a loss of knowledge. We went from an empire in Europe, a Roman Empire, which was quite well organized, I would say, even though there was some issues in it, to a system which was chaotic and with significantly less knowledge. We lost a lot in the Middle Age. And it came back at the Renaissance. It took like 400 years to recover, even more. So never take your society for granted. That's what I will say.
And I will say, without going into details, there are some examples, perhaps on a different level in the United States, where science and religion, even though we have a separation of church and state, there are some times where people feel as though they have to weigh their faith versus other, educational or scientific, and you have to kind of find the bridge between the two, or you have to pick one or the other, which so I think it's still super relevant today. And yes, there's so many examples throughout history, where even, conquerors have come into new cultures and they've burned books and knowledge, and it's just all been lost for fighting a religious war. So it's interesting that even in the future, in this fictional world, humans are grappling with this as well. So anything else on Synax? I thought it was kind of great to see Gail's background.
Yeah, the first scene when she's swimming and she explains one of her fear was the story that her mother used to tell her when she was talking about black holes. And there's two things I want to say here. First, that show that this change in society was extremely recent, because her mother, when she was young, used to tell a story about black holes. Now you see the mother, she works with these slippers. She will never mention even the existence of black holes. That's one thing. And the second thing, I think she used this image to explain basically that, when you cross the event horizon of a black hole, you basically know that you are going to you're going through the black hole. It's over. There is no way for you to escape. That's the definition of the event horizon. And I think they use this image because when she takes the decision to learn math and physics and to educate herself, it's over. There is no way for her to come back. So she goes straight. She will go to Trento, and she will become another person. She's leaving Synax. Yeah.
Yeah, she's leaving her family and everything she's known. So she's going through the event horizon into another world. Hopefully the spaghettiification, she survives it. So let's leave Synax behind and let's talk a little bit about, Terminus, because we'll come back to Gail later on. Do you want to talk about Terminus first? There isn't too much science, but there's a lot of activity happening on Terminus because we pick up where the last episode left off, where the Anacreons are on Terminus. They've wanted to bring the Empire to bear on the planet because they've destroyed this comms buoy. There are lots of soldiers set up outside of this fence that the Foundation has set up around their city. And the warden has captured the huntress of the Anacreons, Farah, and they're trying to figure out what to do with her and also how to fight the soldiers lined up around the outside of the city. Well, it ends up that the warden was right and they shouldn't have taken the Grand Huntress to the tower because the Grand Huntress, in her eye, which they talk about how it was obviously not organic or not the eye that she was born with, she's hiding what I'm guessing is an EMP device, some sort of electromagnetic pulse device in her eye, which seems pretty dangerous. And is also an interesting call out to Dune. If anybody's seen that movie, I won't spoil it, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And she plucks it out of her eye and takes down the fence around the city, correct?
Yes, and the battle starts. Yes.
Yes, and the battle starts. So any science or any interesting anecdotes or insights you want to share about this plot line?
What do I want to share about this part of the story? I don't remember, but there was one science I wanted to discuss.
The ship.
This is the first time we see, I think, an Imperial ship coming out of the FDL. I don't know how you call that. And it's very interesting because it's coming out of it very close to the planet, extremely close that they can see it, basically. It's kind of dangerous when you think about it because this faster than light system seems to bend space-time. Remember, we talked about that. They probably create a tiny black hole in the middle, and that's allow them to kind of create a wormhole and then go through one part to another one. And if you're coming out of a planet, out of the wormhole, close to a planet or in the planet atmosphere like they did, then you have the wormhole in the atmosphere as well. So you may destroy the atmosphere of the planet. That's the first thing that came in my mind. Of course, it's naive because I don't know anything about faster than light technology, and I don't think anybody knows yet. But I was kind of wondering how this is possible. Because I'm assuming that if you have this technology, you try to come out of it far away from the habitable world, and then you move with the normal propulsion system. Maybe they were in a rush, so that's why they take the risk of doing it.
They cut corners.
They cut corners, but then they could destroy the atmosphere of the planet and kill all inhabitants on the planet. So I don't know. That's
Yes. And then the ship does get taken down pretty easily by a single shot from a cannon that the Anacreons brought to Terminus and then cloaked, and it's a one-shot kill essentially. Because what did you make of that?
Yeah, because they're so close to the planet and to the base, in fact, to the Foundation city, that when they shot these missiles with a cannon, they see it coming and they have this anti-missile system, obviously, but they cannot release them. They don't have time because the time they detect the emission of the missiles and the time the missiles arrive to destroy the part of the spaceship is too late. It took like less than 2 seconds. That's what happened when you took confidence and you an empire.
Exactly. You didn't think that these outer worlds could outsmart you.
These barbarians, so they call them.
These barbarians. Yes, yes. And it's interesting. I was under the impression that the Anacreons wanted the Imperial ship because the Imperial ship has such better technology. But the Imperial ship, as far as I could see, is completely destroyed. So I'm curious now if that was just, the start of the Anacreon's great battle, or if there's something they're going to salvage from the ship. I'm not sure. Do you know? Am I missing something?
No, you're not missing anything. We find out about this in the next episodes, in fact.
Oh, okay. So stay tuned on that.
Stay tuned.
Anything else on? Oh, good. Okay, good. Thank you. Anything else on Terminus?
No, I think that's all in Terminus. I mean, it's a battle. We're gonna go back to that in the next episode. So let's go to the most interesting part in my mind.
Yes, let's put a pin in that, and let's talk about the Raven, which is the name of the ship that Gail wakes up on. We see her, we get her background in Synax, which is we've already talked about, and then we see her escape pod arrive on a shuttle or a ship, and it's called the Raven. She wakes up. She uses the knife that Rach killed Harry with and threw in her escape pod, and the knife is the key to getting into the ship. And we find out that the ship is designed to only listen to Rach. So obviously, maybe not obviously, but to me, that means that they were thinking that he would be the one to use the escape pod and perhaps go on to do another part of the plan that's unfolding. And so it's not listening to Gail, and she can't figure out just simply by asking where the ship is, where it's going. She knows that 32 years have passed since she went 34. Thank you, that she went into sleep. But she's doing some really cool things to try and outsmart the computer. What is she doing, Franck?
She has this interesting conversation with this AI, which is which is basically refusing to give her access to anything because she's not Rach. And the AI has a way to find out about that, probably by analyzing a voice or physical appearance. I don't know. I love this interaction with the AI because it made me think about myself when I talk to Siri. Sometimes it's more or less the same. She does not understand me. I repeat, etc. And after a while, I just take my.
You simply search for it, which would have been quicker than yes.
Anyway, so we found out that she can basically see the recordings, first of all, of what happened. So that's the way we found out that so Harry died on the spaceship. Rach was accused for the killing, and she's also accused of the killing, and that Rach was executed. So that's an important part of the story. And then something happened. She's in the shower, and something happened. She basically feels the gravity, a very strong gravity change, and that implies that the ship probably is moving. So if the gravity changed by 180 degrees, apparently, it means that probably the spaceship turned around and is now decelerating. So that means that if it decelerates, it means that he's about to enter into an orbit. So he's slowing down to go in orbit around the planet. You notice that this ship is not using the same propulsion system that the Empire has access to. The ship is using probably faster than light propulsion system, but it's not based on the same technology. There is not the black hole, etc. It's using the same technology that the spaceship of the Foundation. Okay, the slow one.
So it's moving slower than the black hole technology.
Exactly. So, so when she found out that there is a change in gravity, the first thing that came in her mind is to find where she's going. Okay. So she asked, of course, and the computer refused to give her the answer. So she's trying to find a way to do it. I read an interview of the author, and in fact, they asked a scientist from JPL to help them with this. So there is some good science in the story here. The first thing she does, she asks for the location of the quasars. And that's something we do as well. Quasars are these quasi-stellar objects. That's the way the QSO we call them as well. They're extremely luminous in radio, okay? And they're extremely far away. So they're used as a lighthouse in the universe, basically. Because they're so far away, they can basically be used as a reference point. So we do use that. We have what we call the International Celestial Reference System, or ICRS, which is based on the location of quasars to define basically the plan, the plan of the celestial plan and the sphere and the coordinate called the radix, the right ascension and the declinations in the ICRS are based on the location of quasars. So that's the first thing she does. She asks for quasars location. So this way she has an idea of where she is in the galaxy itself. She's very knowledgeable, by the way, because she knows the location of quasars.
She was an encyclopedia.
Yeah. Anyway. And then she decided to do some, from this, she knows that she's in the Argo sector. Apparently, they divided the galaxy in different sectors, like in Star Trek, and she's located in the Argo sector. Don't ask me what is the Argo sector. I don't know. I could have Googled it, but I decided not to do it. Because I decided to focus more on...
You asked Siri, and did she...
And she said, I can understand you, sir.
Yes, exactly. So she used quasars, and then she's triangulating based on quasars. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. Then she finds she's in the Argo sector. And then she looks in the Argo sector, and she gave a name of stars in the Argo sectors that she knows by heart, which is kind of cool, I would say. And she measured the speed of the spaceship by using Doppler effect, by analyzing the spectra of those stars. So what she does here, she simply look at the spectrum of a star, and we have line, and the line move because of the motion of the spaceship with respect to the star. So she does that for multiple stars. So she has an idea that's more or less where she's going. I forgot the conclusion here. But when she look on the screen, on the window, she doesn't see anything. So she's kind of speechless here, and there is a problem because she knows that she's going somewhere, but it's not displayed on the window. And she asked the computer, and the computer basically revealed that she's in fact not seeing in real. She's seeing a screen, and the computer hide the location of the direction of the spaceship. There is a lot of pseudoscience as well in this moment, where she put the cones, the angles, she gives some random numbers, etc. I don't think this is real science, or maybe I don't have the knowledge to understand them, but there is some real science in the way she found the direction of the spaceship. She found the vector. I like this moment where she found basically the vector, the line in the three-dimensional space, but then she has two solutions. Either she's going toward this direction or she's going against this direction, and the computer revealed that the spaceship is inverted and it's slowing down. So she doesn't see anything. She decided to go to outside in space.
She was brave. She put on that spacesuit.
So we have a spacewalk from someone who arrives recently from Synax, stay in Toronto for like 2 days max. I think it's admirable that she has the idea of doing the spacewalk and the courage to do it by herself.
Yes.
And then in the spacewalk, she doesn't outside in space. She looks toward for the opposite direction of the spaceship, and she doesn't see anything. But then she said, if I don't see anything, maybe it's because it's hidden. So she asked the computer of the spacecraft to reveal the infrared light. And here,
yes, because she says it's not going to, if I can't see anything, that means it's not giving off visible light.
Exactly.
Correct? Yeah.
And that's what we do in astronomy. We look a lot in the near infrared, mid infrared. That's why we built telescope on the top of the mountain to have less atmosphere, so access to infrared light. Or we send spacecraft telescopes on airplanes, like the Sophia telescope, or we send them even outside space, like in space, like JWST or Spitzer telescope. Those are mid-infrared, infrared telescopes. They can see in this wavelength range, so through the dust. That's why it's
through
important.
the dust of space, right?
Exactly. And in this, by doing this, she recognized kind of a field of view. She mentioned the existence of a white dwarf or something. And then she see nothing. And she said, oh, this is a dark star. So dark star does not exist. It's not some theoretical thing, but that's not the way we call them. We call them differently, but I'm not gonna talk about. We don't know much about it.
Dark star sounds very metal and very cool, so I think that's why that went by.
And she said, "Okay, I'm going to an habitable world." I don't know where she got this information. Maybe I missed this part. And the only world habitable in orbit around the dark star is called Helicon, and that's the planet of Harry, in fact. So that's where she's going.
Home world.
The home world, yes. I love this scene.
What do we call a dark star in astronomy, theoretical? Or are there multiple terms?
I'm not 100% sure of what they call it. What she thinks is a dark star. Dark star. It's not an easy word to say, by the way. But I can imagine that it will be a star which is hidden because of the presence of dust surrounding it. So it could be one of these very young stars still in formation, or it could be a star kind of capture and destroy a gigantic planet. So it's surrounding by a cocoon of fragment.
I see. Right.
That's what I will call a dark. That's why I will call a dark star, but it's not really dark. It's just like it's emit light, but the light cannot go through us because it's surrounding by dust and fragments. So yeah, I don't know. In the near infrared, you will see that how a world can be habitable in the dark star around the dark star. That's a mystery to me. But this is science fiction, so we will see probably.
Yes,
it's gonna be very.
I hope, because if it's around a young star, it's got the protoplanetary disk that's still full of junk. That would be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, or even if it's cocooned, I don't know if you would get would you still get the warmth that you needed on a planet, or I don't know.
It depends how close or far you are. And it's, I mean, we are totally extrapolating here, but the disk of planetesimal is a disk, remember? So
right.
if your planet is orbiting into eccentric orbit, it's most of the time outside the disk. The planet will receive as light, like Earth around our sun, if it's located at the right location, the right distance. But only when the planets cross the disk, suddenly the star becomes opaque and the temperature drops. But this will take, I would say, 1 month. So that will be kind of a planet which has temperate most of the time, and then suddenly freeze down when they cross the disk. I don't know how the planet survived the crossing of the disk. But the planet itself will survive, but the atmosphere will be changed. There is a lot of physics here that we don't really know.
That's very interesting.
It would be interesting for civilization to know how they survive that. Yes.
Yes. Well, I hope we get to see Helicon and also figure out what's happening here, because she realizes that she's going to Harry's homeworld and she doesn't want to go because, as we saw in her archive flashback, that she's wanted for his death, and her love interest, his adopted son Rach, was executed for his death. So this is not a safe place for her to be. But it also, to me, raises this question of what was the plan to begin with? If Rach was always going to kill Harry and he was going to escape on this pod and go to Harry's homeworld, there must be some sort of planning going on. And Rach even says in one of the flashbacks, when he looks at the camera of the archive right before he's executed, you can solve a puzzle if you're missing a piece.
Yeah. And
it seems like that's a message for Gale. And I don't know if we really know yet what that means, but there's also something kind of spooky going on the ship, because the last scene when Gale has finally figured out what's going on, she's back in the ship, she sees this puddle of blood that flickers and then it disappears, and then she runs further into the ship to try and figure out what's going on. And who does she see, Franck?
Harry. or an hologram version of Harry.
There's something interesting afoot here. Yes, she.
You remember what I said? And when you say, "Oh, he died," so no, maybe he did not die, because he had this tiny machine here on his ear. So somehow, it's still here. He's somewhere as an hologram.
And I don't know if this was a red herring, but in this sort of video archive that she sees where the Foundation sends a message to the Empire about Harry's death, they make a point to say something that's a little odd of, per his instructions, we're going to shoot him into space now that he's dead in a coffin of his own design. Exactly. And I thought that was strange. And I thought, well, maybe I'm not sure, but maybe.
I was thinking about you when I was watching this scene. I said, I'm sure Margaret will remember what I say.
I don't think I'm Team Franck on this. I don't think he's dead. This is like Game of Thrones, that unless you see the dead body really, really dead,
you don't know.
Anything can happen. So I thought this episode was very interesting. I will say all the things on Terminus were not as interesting as Gale for me, but maybe Terminus will kind of become more than just a battle scene.
Yeah.
This episode.
The contrast between the world make the show interesting though. I mean, I do not like battles, as you probably already know. That's totally not my thing, like especially battles for no reasons. Like, frankly, the Foundation has no weapon. There is no chance for them to win this battle. So I don't know why we do have a battle, except just because for the visuals here. Mm-hmm. It's completely useless. A normal human society without weapon, seeing an army coming like this, would I say, okay, we surrender, done. Why are they fighting against here? There is no point. So I really don't like the scene. I mean, all of this story, but it puts the stage as well for the relationship between Anacreon, the Foundation, and the Thespian. It's gonna become more and more complex. Something's gonna happen here in this after this battle. There is more than behind this, okay? But I really like the scene in the spaceship. Because there is a lot of science, and because Gale is smart, she uses her knowledge, and she reveals how smart she is. I mean, she's and knowledgeable. She knows the planets, stars names by memory, and quasar by memory. I mean, wow, kudos for a failing education system on Synax. She managed to learn a lot.
Yeah. Yes, I think she spent significant time with Dr. Sorn when she was younger, because they clearly have that relationship, and she clearly has a very strong base on which to teach herself chaos theory. So yes, her mind certainly would have been wasted if she had only been an acolyte. So I'm glad that she took this route, even if it is quite painful for her personally. But I think this is a good place to wrap up. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get out of it's sunny in Seattle for the first time in a long time, so I'm trying to get out of my little blind spot. But thank you for tuning in. We love talking about the Foundation. We really appreciate anybody who stops by, and we double appreciate anybody who leaves a comment. Tell us what you think, argue with us. Let us know if there's something you want to see more of or less of in the episodes. We really, really appreciate it. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that we are a product of the SETI Institute, which is a science nonprofit whose mission is to understand the nature and prevalence of life in the universe. So if you dig the Foundation, you will probably think that what we're doing is cool. Hit one of the many links below to explore all that is the SETI Institute, including other episodes of the Grudge Report and our donation page if you are so inclined to support us monetarily. But thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Franck, any parting words?
No, goodbye. Thank you very much, Margaret.
Goodbye, and we will see you soon.